We are less than 2 weeks away from Election Day, and one of the races we've been keeping a close eye on is for the 1st District House seat here in Louisiana. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise is running for re-election. He faces a couple of challengers, Howard Kearney, who is a Libertarian, and Katie Darling, Democrat. We heard from both of them earlier this week. And this morning we do get to hear from the incumbent, House Minority Whip Steve Scalise. Thank you for coming in this morning. And obviously, you have a stronghold on this district, and I mentioned that to the two other candidates. What are you telling people that your platform is right now in running for this office?
Yeah, well, first, good morning. Good to be back with you, Eric. And what I've been fighting for over the years I've been in Congress is making sure that Louisiana's got a strong voice, somebody representing our values from South Louisiana. I fight for strong energy policies, which we need desperately right now to lower energy costs. I bring members of Congress down. We talk about coastal restoration. I've been able to bring hundreds of millions of dollars into Louisiana to restore our coast by passing bills like the Restore Act, working with local officials to address flood control, to address some of the other issues that we've faced here. And obviously you fight on the national issues for the things that are important to get the economy back going again. And been running on and helped develop the agenda that we're running on this year called the Commitment to America to get our country back on track, dealing with inflation, energy costs. Our open border crime is becoming a major national issue all around the country in the places I travel. So dealing with those issues and delivering solutions for people back home.
And the last time you were here, we did talk about cooperation amongst Democrats and Republicans. It has been very little, and even on things that the previous administration, the Trump administration, wanted passed was an infrastructure bill. You voted against the infrastructure bill, although it will send a lot of money to Louisiana.
Yeah, we were working on a package that would have been about $400 billion. Would have been the largest infrastructure bill in the history of America, and it would have been
Trump had said he wanted $1 trillion.
Well, but we wanted something lower. We wanted something around $400 billion paid for, and this is where it really gets important. It's the reason I voted against the $1.2 trillion bill that just passed, because number one, most of that bill had nothing to do with infrastructure. You're not going to see roads and bridges built with that money. It's a lot of debt sent to the next generation. We should have been focused on roads, bridges, ports, waterways, and pay for it. Prioritize the money in Washington, not keep
But a lot of the money in
money
that does go for infrastructure.
If about $400 billion goes for infrastructure, then why is it a $1.2 trillion bill? Well, there's a lot of mandates. For example, it can only be union workers. They heavily favor certain companies over other companies. They require you to put the Green New Deal, a lot of these provisions that are jacking up energy costs and shutting down manufacturing in America are in that bill. That's not going to help our economy. It's actually going to hurt hardworking families. So why not just focus on roads and bridges? That's what we were working on. And again, paid for. That wasn't what ultimately we got.
And normally when you run for election, things go pretty smooth. There was kind of a hiccup. If we can roll the videotape, you and some other Republicans, Jim Banks from Indiana, said this.
Was Speaker Pelosi involved in the decision to delay the National Guard assistance on January 6th? Was Speaker Pelosi involved in the decision to delay National Guard assistance on January 6th?
Jim Banks just raised some very serious questions that should be answered by the January 6th Commission, but they're not. And they're not for a very specific reason, and that's because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want those questions to be answered.
And then about a week ago or so, the January 6th committee, House committee, came up with this video showing you in the room while Nancy Pelosi was pleading for help. Let's show that.
I don't want to speak for the leadership that's going to be responsible for executing the operation, so I'm not going to say that because they're on the ground and they're the experts.
Well, just pretend for a moment it was the Pentagon or the White House or some other entity that was under siege. And let me say, you can logistically get people there as you make the plan.
And so what do you tell constituents who are bothered by this and the people who have accused you of lying?
Well, and this gets me angry because it's very heavily edited video, and you notice you didn't roll the full tape. There were 7 very specific questions that Jim Banks had raised right before that.
So you were not referring
all
to...
dealing with things prior to January 6th, and he was very clear, And I've been very clear, by the way, I've raised very specific questions about things Nancy Pelosi didn't do prior to January 6th. And it's interesting that they leave that out because that's the context of the questions. She made those questions off limits to the January 6th Commission. It's one of the reasons I think a lot of people don't take what they're doing as an exercise in trying to get to the truth. It's about going after Donald Trump. It's a vendetta committee because they literally made people off limits. They kicked some of our members off a committee because they were going to ask those questions. So why don't we get the facts out, but be candid about it? Don't edit a video to leave out very important facts that dealt with things prior to January 6th and then go and show it and try to deceive the country. That's what people are sick about.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you believe that former President Trump is responsible, or at least somewhat responsible, for what happened on that day?
Look, there was a lot of hypercharged rhetoric. There's a lot of investigation into it. But I've been very clear. The people who broke into the Capitol are the ones that need to be held accountable and have been, by the way. They've arrested everybody. And I was clear that anyone who broke into the Capitol that day ought to be arrested. So,
well, Trump's already said he might pardon some of those if he gets back in.
You know, look, I don't even know what that would ultimately look like. At the end of the day, why don't we talk about the issues people care about? Pelosi has been fixated with Trump, January 6th. They talk about abortion every day. And people go back home and they're struggling to pay their bills. They can't afford to put gas in their tank. There's crime in every community. We see it in New Orleans. Every country, everywhere I go around the country, I'm seeing crime. I was in Portland, Oregon. Crime's the driving issue there, why we're going to win more seats. I was in New York yesterday. Same thing. Lee Zeldin, my colleague on the Republican side, is about to win the governorship of New York because people are angry about crime. And the Democrats in Washington support defund the police. They support cashless bail. It's why we have crime out of control. They're talking about issues that aren't the kitchen table.
What Democrats are you talking about who say defund the police? Because I hear Biden all the time saying, no, that we want to fund them more.
Yeah, except he said as a candidate in 2020, he said that he would support defund the police. They're very convenient right now about trying to walk away from it because the public realizes how crazy of an idea it is, but they embraced that movement. When they were burning down cities in 2020 or 2019, you didn't hear any Democrats standing up against it in Washington. They were actually encouraging a lot of that. And then later the public turned against it, and then they tried to distance themselves. But they absolutely embraced defund the police. And there's video of them talking about it. Now they realize it's wrecked communities, and people are angry about it. It's why, again, it's why Lee Zeldin's probably going to get elected governor of New York as a Republican, because he's confronting crime, and the Democrat governor isn't.
I'm running short on time. Let's switch gears for a second. If the Republicans do take the House, and it looks like they will money still pour into Ukraine to fight off Russia?
I think what you're going to see is a more focused effort on helping Ukraine, but not all of the other things. A lot of things that we have problems with is they'll bring a bill that's supposed to help something, and then they throw in a whole lot of unrelated items that jack up the cost and that really take the focus away. We've been supportive of helping the people of Ukraine fight against Putin. And frankly, they were asking for that help before the invasion, and President Biden didn't give it to them. They asked for surface-to-air missiles, surface-to-sea missiles.
And you would have liked to see them get that.
And I would have liked to see them get it before they started carpet bombing cities all across Ukraine. I've been out to that region. I've been in Poland, where a lot of our efforts are. It's not just America, about 10 different countries, mostly NATO countries, are bringing weapons, other supplies in through Poland, working their way all throughout Ukraine. Let's help the people of Ukraine fight against Putin, get their country back. But a lot should have been done in advance of that. What we've been talking about is, why don't we get a kind of a consistent policy? What happened in Afghanistan shows you the debacles of a failed foreign policy, leaving $85 billion in military technology to the Taliban.
Okay.
That's a problem.
All right. Well, Congressman Steve Scalise, thank you for coming in, and thank you for answering our questions. In a race like this, you didn't have to show up, and you did. So we commend you for that. And as we've said to all the candidates, good luck on Election Day.
It's an honor to serve. Thank you.
All right. If you missed any of this interview or any of the other ones we've had with the other two candidates in the race, Democrat Katie Darling and Libertarian Howard Kearney, you can watch them on our website, WWLTV.com, as well as our YouTube page and our mobile app. Election Day is November the 8th. Let's